got the recording in progress. This is good. Our first reader is Joan Shillington. Joan is a Calgary poet who writes in a loft overlooking the Rocky Mountains. She's been published in the Antigonish Review, Grain, Prairie Fire, Freefall, CV2, and has placed first, second, and honorable mention in poetry contests. As well, she has poems in various anthologies, Happier in Ours. Her third collection of poetry, Let This Lake Remember, was published by Frontenac House in 2020, and it is beautiful. Anyone who hasn't read it, it's a special place on my bookshelf. And Joan, also to my pleasant surprise, turns out to be a neighbor. We both live in the same hood, as we discovered one snowy day on our way home from coffee. And so lots of ways that I appreciate Joan. So I would invite you to come and read. So I've come limping up. I'm the limper. Isn't this just beautiful, everybody? I'm so proud to be in it. So thank you, Heidi and Anne and Shelf Life for having us. So my first poem is First Want, 1963. This took place at our cottage. You know how little communities on the lake are. They're very, very casual. We had neighbors and they didn't mind me as a little girl popping in and out, in and out. And so these are two ladies that I befriended on the lakefront. And I thought it was quite the experience, and I'll remember it till the day I die. First Want, 1963. Loretta opens the door wide at my unexpected visit while wandering the beach road, ushers me in, asks if I would like ripple chips and apple juice, my favorite treat she keeps for me. Her friend Betty pours coffee. Working women, red nails, matching blouses, slacks, discuss their desire for a baby to just get pregnant. 12 years old, I crunch and listen to the first thirst of want in my life. They question birth control, pill problems, the sexual revolution. Did the Pope have a point? When and if the time comes, no yellow room or clothes, breast or bottle. I dip my chips in the juice, minimize the crunch. So then my children grow up. I have children, my children grow up, and suddenly I'm a grandmother in Toronto, looking after two little boys with the other grandma. And for a week while my daughter and her husband are in France. And we have a lot of fun, but it rains every day. And what do you do with two little boys in the rain in Toronto, right? The wing breath of wasps. Two grandmas. We bundle the boys in their red wagon and walk the distance for hot chocolate. Huddle beneath table umbrellas in a rain deluge. We watch 4 wasps crawl between puddles, grounded, drenched, but still trying. Afterwards, we visit exotic birds and reptiles at a pet store. 4 kittens for sale. We name them Rover, Ginger, Spotty, Paws. There was a silence within the downpour, even along Yonge Street with Saturday traffic, and the avenue where wet leaves clung to the boys as we hurried home for supper. And that is how the day is taken, by each little thing, the come and the go of it, confused by a beauty that disguises itself as our lives. I had 4 daughters. I had a son too, but I had 4 daughters. And the daughters came one after the other quite quickly. And so I was surrounded by all these little girls, and we were kind of a unit because my husband traveled a lot. They came one after the other. I say daughter and think water. womb warm brooking down my thighs, the push and whoosh, shattered years, salted pain, wax and wane, moon slave, sun slave. I say daughter and knots, unhook my thoughts, dear God, daughters, rainbow prisms, Easter lilies, bloom translucent. I say daughter and think water, soft as slippers or silk, oceans swoosh, swoop, swirl, surfs curl, sand, stones. Daughters, I think, ancient light, grace.
Thank you, Joan. Our next reader is Vivian Hansen. Vivian has published poetry, creative nonfiction, essays, and memoir in Canadian journals and anthologies. Funded Aggie, am I going to say that right?
Probably not, it's all right.
Probably not. And the Foxtail Phenomenon, I can say that for it. It was published in Coming Here, Being Here by Granica Editions in 2016. Telling was published in Waiting, University of Alberta Press, 2018. Her 3 full-length books of poetry are Ley Lines of My Flesh, Touchwood Press, 2002. A Bitter Mood published a long poem, Design Charette for 220 Blackstone Park with Loft 112 in 2019. Vivian's contribution to mothering toward Heidi was published in Free Fall in winter 2018. And Vivian teaches poetry and creative writing in Calgary at UC. And I'm so grateful for all she's taught me because we do that together. And I watch how Vivian is with students and how she nurtures in them a love of words and helps them, gives them a really high bar for the skill of putting them down on the page in a way that honors what they're trying to say. So it's kind of interesting.
I know that some of you came just to see or to hear how to pronounce the word hygge.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, and it's hundo, but that's okay. Thank you, Heidi, for that lovely introduction. So here we have toward hygge, where the me becomes we, like a slow saunter, hand in hand toward a candlelit supper for two, like a ring of hands held around a pine tree in Canmore to sing and dance as the winter solstice passes. In my 60th year, which also happens to correspond with Canada's 150th birthday, I am walking towards solstice and offer a backward glance to women before me, mother and grandmother, my Danish bestemor. They should be more than a backward glance. They should be more than old breasts that map my DNA, my forward motion in Canada. They are cloven on the inside because of immigration, their tongues split in two, Danish and English. The way tongues grow together after a piercing, my women conquer the cleaving. They seek hygge, how it might dance in this new land. Bestemo has been working for weeks now on a sengetep, a bedspread white and light and heavy as spring snow. She prepares squares of a lacy snowflake pattern, all of which will be bound together in a final large spread. As each square is completed, Bestefa asks, "Har du gjort färdig med den fyrkantiga lilla mål? Have you finished another square, little mother?" He loves to watch her ebony eyes that she will mostly entrust to the white squall of crochet. Then as her eyes turn to him, she offers 2 black pools. Squares too simple. It is design, 4 elemental corners of knowing. This is handarbeit, handiwork. The prayer of hands imitates God's design in 4, a quatrain of purpose and impulse of links. Vem är du går sengetep för? Asked Bestefa. Who are you making the sengetep for? For one of her girls, whoever will need it the most. She says this to avoid prophecy, naming one of her daughters as someday needing more than the other. There are things that cannot be until they are. Eldest Anna, husband Evat, and 2 sons prepare for immigration. Anna despairs, a fear she might abandon Hygge. All I want is our home here, our own furniture that we have had for years. I know it's not fancy, but it is ours, our Hygge. And so is the garden, my flowers and plants. It is precious to me, don't you see? Bestimo's sengetep hangs in lush white lengths across a bed. It is a rich thing that gropes for endings, relaxing its links over the 4 corners. The cotton is sturdy and heavy like almond icing. The sengetep collects air, wind, fire, and water. Air for the scent of firewood and peat burning, settling into tough stands that Bestimo linked. Fire for the passion between them, the faith that keeps them whole while storms rage around them. Water for unseen mists in Danish autumns. Earth for what is and what shall be if there's blessing. Hygge is the moment where you become we as we lay beneath 4 elements. When her daughter, son-in-law, and grandsons prepare to leave, Bestimo gathers the sengetep into a box to give to Anna. This daughter will need it the most. Ship route, Le Havre, Southampton, Montreal. Anna's tears become the ocean, despondent waters with no vision but gray. This is too horrible. I may as well plunge into the deep of the ocean so the hawks can have me. I am no good anyway, so why not? I staggered along the corridor of the ship around the corner of the boathouse, only 2 to 3 yards from the railings. And who was standing right there? Evat. And I run straight into his arms, and believe me, it felt good. My mother is tall enough to wave the white bedspread like a flag over the bed. Its cloth settles like a prairie snowstorm. I plant my little self on the opposite side of her. In a housework dance between the 2 of us, we smooth down the links and white ropes of cotton, taking care to make it flat and beautiful, like a field of snow dreams. This repetition, this routine is a pattern that I know is a fresh movement each day. A little girl must know how to find Hygge. Anna once pleaded for answers from her parents. What to do about the desperate loneliness on a flat, flat prairie. The mountains so close, stone refusing Hygge. Bestimo offered more words. What you don't know and don't understand, leave it. Live your life with what you know. What you know is Hygge, the struggle with ephemera. Realize that new things require a name in English. The cleavage of the tongue closes in on itself after the pierce. Sengetep, bedspread, that Hygge thing that warms the we of us. I pluck a Color Life paint chip bookmark from a book I'm reading. It is a yellow called Faceless, so light as to be the breath of a moon. So subtle but intrusive so that one may never notice the law of it, how it couples with light and lies down in a slumber where skin strokes a moonlight. It is Hygge that holds the mitochondrial DNA of yellow, so distant in mother generations. Its milk perceived only in mitochondrial tones. If I lie down with this color, I will sleep in deep alpha bones, naule. Anna says, I am repairing the sengetep. There was so much dust and dirt in it, I was afraid it would fall apart, but it hung together. Dad strung it over a clothesline in the basement, then stitched and repaired some of the holes in it. Bestimo said it must go to whoever needed it the most. Anna is never happier than when she binds old mysteries together. She decides to release some of her power. This is what a crone does when she senses the end of things. Repair may be in order. I covet the sengetep. I want its heft and hard feel of its links in my lap on my bed. I want the fingertip stretch between myself and my Bestimo like Michelangelo's painting, God touching the soul of Adam fingertip to fingertip. Anna gives it to me, watches my eyes for signs of delight. My hands stroke the crochet links, making smooth the white lines that sometimes mound over a bed. All my life, I've curled my fingers in between my Bestimo's Honda squares in my sleep, covered by her prayers. Only now do I begin to see patterns, geometrics of hope, all fabrics and fabrications turning and imposing angles of life toward Hygge. My attack Bestimo, many thanks. I whispered to the air, to her listening. In the place where I speak, Bestimo smiles. Each crochet link is a path, a trail of homilies for mothers who were broken by immigration. In this Canada, Hygge divines a place of rest. My daughter stands in the bedroom doorway as my voice stumbles over words that tell her this story. I needed the Sengatep the most. I belay this word so her ears absorb it as a necessary noun, a link to her great-grandmother. I needed the Sengatep the most. Not my mother, my sister, my aunt, my cousin, me. That's a beautiful story, Mom. Her long fingers stroke the old Sengatep, slide along its restitched links. Her touch is a dialect between herself and her mother's. I seek her face, her black eyes, to catch a hint of her thoughts. She looks at me, smiling. Hygge. That word reminds me of hug, she says. Her eyes glisten like the old woman who made the Sengatep, those black stones gleaming under a slow creak of tears.
Yvonne Trainer, you're next. Yvonne is a poet, editor, researcher, and writer in Lethbridge, Alberta. She's published a chapbook and 4 books of poetry and is a member of the League of Canadian Poets and Academy of American Poets. Her First Nations poetry collection, Tom Three Persons, Frontenac House, 2002, has been read both nationally and internationally. Recently, Yvonne's work has appeared in YYC Poetic Portraits of People, edited by Sherry D. Wilson, Frontenac House, 2020. Calgary Through the Eyes of Writers, editor Sean Hunter, 2018, and In Word City, edited by Darcy Friesen-Halsack, who's also one of our contributors to Mothering. More recent poems by Yvonne are available by the Dogwood Reading Series on YouTube, and also watch for a poem by Yvonne that's forthcoming in the Canadian Women's Studies Journal. I'm really happy that you're here. Please come.
Hello. Thank you, and Oki. Thank you to Anne, thank you to Heidi, and thank you to David, and thank you to all my poet friends from many years ago and all my new friends that have showed up tonight. I'm going to read 2 poems, Contract Expired. 1, she stands in a half-empty parking lot, holding a shoebox full of pens in her left hand, a handful of books in the right. Given to detail, she notes glint of sun on cars, silence of the evergreens, a shadow like a stain on the house of learning. The pen is mightier than the sword. 2, even in sleep, she stands in a room full of empty desks. Her handwriting fills the board with sentences that makes no sense. She turns and a chairman whom she's never met, bursts through a back door she didn't know was there, marches to the front of the room, stares at her, and disappears. The pen is mightier than the sword. 3, she thinks of school uniforms on a line, the blazers still stained with blood, of war nurses leaning over tubs of water to scrub away stains on young men's uniforms, of Walt Whitman leaning forward to kiss the wounds of young soldiers. The pen is mightier than the sword. 4, there is no end to death. In Pakistan, Taliban terrorists kill 145, mostly children. In Russia, 334 white balloons were set to the sky. In Rio de Janeiro, a gunman opened fire, killing 12 children before shooting himself. He left a suicide note. In La Loche, Saskatchewan, 4 people killed at a school, an unnamed number missing. In Connecticut, 20 children killed. He'd already killed his mother, whose guns he stole. He killed himself at school. These are the details. They continue. The desks are broken. There is blood on the wood, on the windowsills, on the walls. There are holes in the blackboard, fallen plaster on the floors. The windows are smashed. Pages from books are scattered like wings torn from gulls. There is one blue pen cap missing, left on an open book on the one upright desk. The pen is mightier than the sword. I don't know how it got to be called Halifax Public Gardens, because originally it was Public Gardens, but somehow it ended up being Halifax Public Gardens again, which is fine. Halifax Public Gardens. A man and a woman walk at noon in the public gardens. She pushes a baby in a stroller. He pushes his father in a wheelchair. The father is bald and skeletal. He has no teeth. His legs have been amputated at the knees. The baby is bald and has no teeth. She has not yet learned to walk. The couple park the wheelchair and stroller side by side, facing the empty outdoor stage. They turn to buy ice cream from a vendor. The grandfather reaches out one bony finger. The baby grasps it. They grin toothless grins. A brass army band appears, ascends the stage. Gold instruments flash in the sun. The band plays. Everyone stops. Old-fashioned men in suits arise from the benches, take off their hats and hold them to their hearts. Little flocks of blackbirds fly up. Dew dries on the grass. The couple stand at attention, holding an ice cream cone in each hand. In the background, a thirsty ocean laps and laps up the music. An excited dog wags and wags its tail. The little girl in yellow sundress tugs on the old man's finger. They grin and lean forward together. Thank you.
Move on. Next, my wonderful partner, Anne Sorbie. And it's Anne's vision who sparked my own, and away we went with this anthology from different experiences, but of very like heart and mind. And she is fully and wonderfully responsible for promoting the goodness of mothering far and wide in Canada and the States. And so it's really wonderful that she can read tonight for the first time with all of us. Anne's fiction, poetry, essays, and book reviews have been published by Anna Publications and the University of Alberta Press, Frontenac House, House of Blue Skies, and Thistledown Press, in magazines and journals such as Alberta Views, Geist, and Other Voices, and online with Brick Books, CBC Canada Writes, and Geist. Anne's third book, Falling Backwards into Mirrors, under this launch here, was published by Anna Publications in 2019. Most recently, her work can be found in the anthology You Look Good for Your Age, University of Alberta Press, 2021. She is the mother and stepmother of 5 and grandmother of 3, and a wonderful mother and grandmother, as I attest to with our updates about how your days are, and they're full and they're rich. So please come and read.
Pauline, and thanks everybody for being here tonight. It's just so great to see you in person. I have one poem in the anthology, and it has a Gaelic title. It's called Bana Baherna Nan Isla, or Our Lady of the Isles. So when I started thinking about mothering and I wanted to write about it, I went to the Kwan of mothers. I'm going to talk about Mary, the Virgin Mother. And to do that, I considered the idea of Mary, the material object that Mary is, and Mary as an artistic construct. So the poem's got a couple of statues in it, and they're very different, as you'll hear as I go forward. Why are statues of the Holy Mother, pale blue and white, subtly shiny, haloed, hallowed, even plaster cast, her hands in that annoying open gesture, as if to say the whole world, no, universe, is welcome to come close and suckle. Why do some include the child, as if the woman, hymen intact, doesn't have enough to bear already? The child appears sometimes on her lap, in her arms, perched on her shoulder, or incredibly, even standing on her hands. His head above her head, his hand on her head, benevolent as he is in Our Lady of the Isles, installed high on Ruval, on South Uist, an island off the west coast of Scotland. Ironic, because there she looks north, waiting and wanting the wind, as if called upon in effigy, as if to mother the place in quiet protest, daring us to defy her protection, as if her figure provides a luscious lick on the land. Granite Mary, hoisting her generous son, is an instrument of conjecture. Mary was used to resist, as mothers often are, as archetypes of defense, convenience, succor, and strength, as an homage or a giant swollen edifice to be pricked. What did you think? To be taken for mothering requires that the arms are ever open, that the palms or the rest of the body for that matter are permanently on call. Listen, the proof is in another statue here near the church, the door up to the Church of Conjecture. On the outside, this Mary is renewed, recast and plaster as white as Paris. Inside, steel rods concealed in her empty arms fling them to the same height as the grown child's on the cross. The halo perches on another that rises from the back of her neck, and we only see the tip of that rod. The rest is buried iceberg deep in her spine, unstable now after the brute force upon entering sheared off the holy wings of the vertebrae in a circumcision of laminae. Her bare toes curled and gripping in pain, the serpent's head bulging under her right foot, edges of her gold sandals shining at the hem of her dress, and that same gold leaf mirrored on the rosary that corsets her waist, thin, imagine, as it was before the burden of the child. The gilded beads first decade and cross pointing lazily to that deep valley. Yes, that one, the one that all men say they love the best. The statue of Mary here presented is glamorous and calling, defined by Hollywood hair, bobbed and blonde, as if Madonna, the Madonna made over as a Marilyn, perpetuates the mystery of pointed mammary, great and white and dripping, always, always from the sky. Thank you.
Josephine LoRe. Next. Jo's words have been read on stage and in Zoom rooms globally, published in 11 countries and 3 languages, put to music, danced, and integrated into visual art. In 2021, her poetry was published in Canada's Freefall and Vellum magazines, the Fixed and Free Anthology and US Mercury Heartlink, and Ireland's Same Page Anthology. Josephine has 2 collections which integrate her poetry and photography, Unity and the Calgary Herald bestseller, The Cowichan Series, from Kuros Publications 2019. She belongs and contributes to a variety of Canadian and international poetry societies. Please.
Wonderful to be back here and to see poets face to face again. I'm going to read the poem that is in the anthology and then a bunch of other poems that have to do with mothering, being a daughter with, and my own children as well. I am ready to memorize mother, that new hesitation in her voice as she asks again if she's added salt to the tubatini bubbling in the pot. The way every time I fly back and hold her, she has shrunken, one size smaller, shed inches of assurance, lost pounds of fierceness. I am afraid to delete her voicemail, though she always says the same things. How are the kids? Wear a scarf, make some honey lemon for that throat, as if I were still 12 or 12 again. And she's surprised at the recipes I recite to her from memory, expressions she taught me when I was a child, Sicilian expressions like un geldo senza tre. Things happen in threes like my sisters and me. When she has grown small enough, I will fold her up and tuck her into my breast pocket so that she can feel forevermore the drumbeats of my heart. I wrote this for my firstborn child who was struggling with trying to help and not being sure how to help and kind of feeling pushed along by life. The river. You are not riverbank, sculpted by time, eroding strata, geology. You are not willow, roots reaching down, drawing nutrients from soil, biology. You are not leaves at season's end, flittering, floating on current, morphology. You are not stone cast from shore, concentric rings, cushions, repercussions. You are living water, flowing, creating a path despite patterns predetermined. You are irrepressible, mutable. You are fierce, soft. You are not riverbank, passively observing, grieving the passing of river. You are river. I did this on the occasion of my son's engagement, the rooftop. You squeezed the metal frame of the screen, slipped out open window, lay on asphalt shingles to look up at the scattering of stars, the din of Deerfoot traffic, incessant. I only found out later. That's how things went when you were kids, the secrets you held to your chest, the barriers transgressed, the dreams you dreamt unbeknownst to me. I should have birthed you in the forest under bough of ancient cedar. I should have licked from you the vernix, planted your placenta in the cradle of the land. You hear the full moon howl while you are sleeping, are unafraid of spider, unafraid of snake. You paddle on a glass smooth lake at nightfall, and when you knelt to ask your girl to be your wife, it was in the silence of snow, the witness of the mountain. A boy, you climbed onto the rooftop to sleep under the stars. You stitched them one by one to glimmer in the fabric of your life. My youngest had moved to Fernie, and it was the first time I was going to visit her. And she's a snowboard instructor, and her first pet was a rat. So I hope rats don't give you the creeps. Love is in the air, and I say love with cheese, Gruyere, and Emmenthal, Brie, Parmigiano. Crocs for the oven, red and gray. A bag full of onions and bay leaves plucked from Nana's garden last summer. A half-baked baguette and chicken stock and thyme. And while you're on the slopes, I play my music, that same song over and over, but you're not here, so it won't drive you crazy. And as the soup simmers, I brown the bread and grate the cheese. You come in smelling of the mountain. Tell me about the lessons you taught that day while your rat babies snuggle on your scarf, and I feel like a mom again. And in this delicious moment, love is in the air. This last one is very new and very painful for me. My father passed away over the summer, and my children all came out. Bereft. In that photo, you're standing on your nonno's knees, pajamaed feet, his hands encircling you, steadying you. The first boy in the family, after 3 daughters, 3 granddaughters. The first boy, he was 62. The photo tucked into the frame of the tapestry which fills his study wall. You flew back with your beloved, wanting her to know your nonno to know her. He couldn't attend your wedding, sickness stealing his strength, so I asked him to make a video message shared with you the morning of your marriage. He had met Nanina at a wedding when he was just 18, sang her the serenade in the old Sicilian style. Weeks after your wedding, you flew back with your bride to stand at his bedside, his withered hand in yours. When you were a child, you would place the palm of your hand against mine, pulse to pulse, to see how much you needed to grow. Your fingers lengthened with the years, now longer than mine. And as I stood at my father's casket, you came up to me and gathered me in your arms, allowing me to cry, steadying me. I am 60, a daughter, a mother, bereft, consoled. Thank you.
My friend Dorothy. Dorothy Bentley was born in Southern Ontario and has made Alberta her home for many years. It was beloved by so many of us. She's taught creative writing, worked as a freelance writer, producing articles and newspaper columns. She works for the Writers Group Alberta and divides her writing practice between poetry and novels. Escape from the Wildfire, some of you may have seen it on its launch. New boxes on Dorothy's page arriving. It's a YA fiction, ages 10 to 18, arrived at Dorothy's house with boxes for Christmas, I think, perhaps. The launch is coming up at Owlsmith, I think, like quick, right? And then there's going to be, I think, a Zoom hosting event here, which is wonderful. And so we're all really happy to honor your fine writing, Dorothy. Met Dorothy years ago in a writing class together that Vivian came as a guest speaker. And so it's kind of quite neat to know that Dorothy's in this anthology and is going to read for us tonight. So please come.
So lovely to see all of you in person after seeing some of you for years online. That's wonderful. Have any of you ever had the experience of looking at a poem that you had written and wondering, who wrote this? That happened with this one. I looked at it to prepare a couple of days ago, and I can't say that I barely recognized it, but it has certainly changed from the original, but in all the best ways. Thanks to Anne and Heidi for their thoughtful editing. And in other ways too, it's a collaboration, not just from my own experience, but also from other women that I know, women who've experienced loss of children, but in many different ways, some through death, some through addiction, and some through children that have left. It's called Full Body Tattoo, which is a metaphor for pain that turns beautiful eventually. They unfurl for you from fetal to free. Stars form as needles pierce rainbow hues. What images will you surface? apothecary pinprick, muscle memories of trauma and thrills. Metaphoric torso dioramas spread thigh flowers, trilling trellis back to shoulders, disguised visions and dreams of babies, swollen womb and throbbing breasts, missing, accumulated deaths. Skin tingles ending with soul bleed, mind rage, heart bleed, ink, paint life, beautiful pain. You are aesthetic joy, as life left no joy, no walking around life outside those skeletons. Our lives like discarded tattoo needles. You were their pain, arms spread wide to death, to spirit, transforming us. The flowers refashion old hurts. Eulogies bloom as inked narratives. Passionate lives lived amid pain, deeply loved pain, joy mingled with dust to dust, fragments of spirit.
Adrienne Adams is our next reader, Adrienne. Adrienne is a poet, artist, and curator dedicated to creating safe, intersectional space to honor the feminine. She curates, holds voices, joking that it's an excuse to howl in public. I don't think you need an excuse. You just do it. Her work is published in Anthology, Free Fall, Politics, Letters Live, Car Poems, Polyglot, Wax Poetry and Art, Rose Quartz, and forthcoming in Node, Voices of Eve, and several other publications. Adrienne has featured at South Country Fair, The New Beat, The Storytellers in UYYC, Expressions Poetry, Flywheel, University of Calgary Spoken Word, YYC Speak, Reading Series, The People's Poetry, and Ignite Festival. That's a lot. She has also co-curated for Single Onion and the Calgary International Spoken Word Festival. I'm really happy that you're here to read. Hi, Adrienne.
Oh, I'm like darn close. Look, she's like, I'm gonna find it for you. Just so people are right there. Just think. We could just use the
Or
title.
we could just do
There
that
we go.
too.
There we go. So thank you, Heidi. I'm very honored to be here today and to be in this collection. And I was like, oh, that's an old bio, because I recently accomplished two goals of mine, which was to be in a book that's in the public library finally, which is kind of cool. And then I've also have some poems recently published in Filling Station magazine, which I'm very happy about, and upcoming in a book about spontaneous creation, art making. And I have been reading this book lately, which is by Robert Bly, who I had no idea was a poet, just known for the men's movement and gratitude to old teachers, which has blown me away. It's absolutely fantastic. And a lot of people in this audience and this anthology are old teachers of mine, including Vivian. It's been a long time since a poetry reading has made me cry in public. So thank you for that. Vivian was the teacher of the first official poetry class that I ever took, which had Joan and Josephine and two other people in it. And then I also recently took a poetry class with Dr. LoRe, and Yvonne, we read your poem in there too. So even though I'm honored that this is the first time we've met, but lots of old teachers. And I started Wolf's Voices in 2013 and wrote two poems that were kind of like manifestos or womanifestos, as Charity would say, about the mission of what that was about. And the poem I Seek, which I'm going to read, was one of those. And my mother passed away last year, and she was a Catholic and one of the most amazing people I have ever known. And we had very different opinions on things, but she definitely inspired and she would have never called herself a feminist either, but she definitely inspired me and my values, and is very much behind this poem. And so I want to dedicate this reading to her, and also do a little bit of a public apology because I completely dropped off the face of the earth in terms of Wolf's Voices after Mom passed, and I have not done anything with it aside from eventually retrieve and distribute most of the funds from the fundraiser we had that June, which took me months because grief is hard. Grief is really hard work, and I've just had no spoons. And you know, Anne and Heidi and I had talked about potentially doing a Wolf's Voices reading for mothering, because I feel like, especially after my mom passed, that she really is behind. And you know, I am childless today. I always thought I would be a mother, but my mom really taught me everything that's in this poem. And yeah, I'll just read it. So, this is called I Seek. I am seeking a feminine voice echoing across golden ages of curves that is fat and kind and round, with wisdom dripping off her rims in dregs of toffee ground tears, a voice that squeals with the high edge of masculinity stretched beyond its breaking point, to give birth and bleed salt into my years of knowing just how deep I am and you are. I am seeking a voice that is valued for its vulnerability, for the strength in its years of innocence, so that I can leap with unburdened joy. I am seeking a voice full of motherhood, not just for all the children, but for all the burgeoning things living inside my friends' hearts of hearts, so that we are nurtured in a way to know that we are loved infinitely and always. I am seeking a voice that breaks the very bonds of its oppression by dissolving like water and flowing over everything that has tried to quell it. This voice is a phallus crying to be engulfed in heated convulsions of sticky tides, speaking cunt language softly with the sagacity of love, one word with so many meanings. Suckling on the suckling of sprouting until we bloom and die and return again, weekly, monthly, daily, howling at the moon, which moves the tides of our enslaving in a steady stream of transformation. I'm seeking a feminine voice that howls, content to be heard and valued for nothing other than what it is. I am seeking a feminism that embraces the feminine in a humanitarian hug of X and Y chromosomes jumbled up to spell LGBTQ forwards and back again, until we all know finally and forever that we all come from our mother's hearts, down an unbroken chain of eternity that is boundless and flows with the very life of blood, the first sacrament we partake. This is my body. Eat, feast, devour.
Joan Crate is our final reader tonight. Joan lives in Calgary. She's the mother of 3 sons and 1 daughter, and each of her children was born in a different decade. And that's really something. She's also the proud grandma to 2 lovely girls. Joan's published 2 novels and 3 books of poetry. Her first novel, Breathing Water, New West Press, 1989, was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Book Award in Canada and the Books in Canada First Novel Award. She's the recipient of the Bliss Carmen Poetry Award, and her last book of poetry, Suburban Legends, Freehand Books 2009, was awarded Book of the Year by the Writers Guild of Alberta. Joan's novel Black Apple was published by Simon & Schuster in 2016 and won the City of Calgary W. Mitchell Book Prize in 2017. And Joan's also a good friend of our son's godfather, which I learned during the publishing of Mothering. So I'm really happy to know that. And I'm really glad that you're here to read as our final reader. So we're covered. So please come.
Much. It's lovely to be here. We've had a lot of different readings tonight. There is something magical about being in person at a reading, isn't there? It's so different, and you could start to feel like all the people and the voices and that. I have the poem I chose to read tonight is one I've never read before, and it's also about loss. And I'm fortunate in that I have not lost any of my 4 children, but I have so many friends who have for all kinds of reasons. And it doesn't really matter what the reasons are because it's always such a tragedy. We never expect our children to die before we do. And I wrote this a few Christmases ago, just after a friend of mine lost her son. Sudden leap away. As we drove up to the house, it was the way the buck peered at us that struck me, its solemn regard. As if that boy's spirit infused the deer, his grace in its sudden leap away. How did he know what trail to take, which led to the cliff, which to the creek bed, the hollow of stone to lie down and sleep in? The antlered eyes left wounds on our skin. Now I wait for him to reappear, an apple in my hand. Everything, everyone is hungry. That bruise-colored whisper, persuading snow to melt into night, like him at 10, afraid of being teased, he'd hold daylight in his lungs until it hardened to a warning of poor visibility and careless driving. By 16, he had learned to look past everyone with road-weary eyes, cool as a snooze at the wheel. I think that really is him in the deer in the shade. Saplings too, they sprung up at the side of the road confident at first, growing a foot a year, conferring with peers. One was perfectly symmetrical, and I imagined it in years to come, strung with Christmas lights and songbirds, a grinning green emblem of the future, until the drought came. Needles yellowed and branches turned brittle. The tree never recovered. So 2 weeks ago, we chopped it down and stuck it in a bucket of stones, our beautiful butchered sacrifice, a casualty of weather, martyr to changing fortunes. This is his winter, of course. We can't wish Merry Christmas without hearing the season of his laugh. White roses bloom from his mouth and form a wreath at our throat. We choke. All through the holidays, he is with us in the house. A decorated soldier, a wandering carol. The memory of a man gone home, his gift dropped in an empty room. Even the sundogs howl his name. Come spring, flocks of birds will build in the branches of his absence, furnish their nests with the soft down of his footsteps, walking silently through the corridors of our loss. The second night of the new year, the moon is an overblown balloon. The stars cry bright. Thanks.
We're at the time, David, for questions.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So first, thank you to the readers so much. It's reminded again what a beautiful book this is, and And thank you to everyone who came to hear these wonderful words and to be moved. And hopefully to, I think one thing Anne and I hoped for was that this anthology would inspire new kinds of conversations about mothering our parents and mothering ideas and being mothered and losses and hopes and the act of creation and how we don't get to control that at all and how we are changed by it. So in that spirit, does anyone have questions for any of our readers? I'd be happy to field them.
I had a question and you answered it.
Okay. What was it?
It's going to be kind of like what you learned by you and being editors and taking in the whole gamut of the writing. And so you answered it with creating and finding new ways. And I thought it was.
I'll go with that. We learned a lot of
But you can have.
well, and no, I think that's probably the big one, but I think we were really humbled by what we learned. I mean, we probably had a vision for what it could be, and it was more, we learned more by what we read. I'm sitting in BAM together and reading. And what would you say? Anything you want to add to that?
I think there would probably
Do.
There's a number of surprises too, because part of our call for submissions, part of the criteria was that you did not have to be a mother in any way, shape, or form in a traditional sense to be part of this book. And so we actually had two men, an artist and a writer,
Really happy.
right, who submitted. And I mean, they were the only male people that submitted and ended up in the book. But, you know, I would have to say, you know, also learning about the great amount of trust it takes for writers to share their work, like such personal work. A lot of this is some of it you've heard tonight with other people, because to bare your soul in that way and to put your words out into the world, it's probably one of the hardest things a writer could do. And so it was quite an honor. Yeah, it was quite an honor.
Especially because we wanted this book to say, oh, we wrote a book about mothering, and lots of people had an idea of, oh, it's gonna be nice.
Yeah, chicken soup for the soul.
Yeah,
And that kind of thing. And
it is beautiful and it's hard.
Yeah.
But and can't sound saying it's risky to share each moment. And yeah. Thank you for your question.
yeah. And again, thank you for being here. It's just, I can't tell you what a feeling it is. I saw Cecilia and I thought, oh, I'm gonna cry. Because, you know, we all haven't had a chance to be together like this. So it's wonderful. So thank you very much for coming.
Any other questions?
It isn't a question, but I want to say that having read a lot of the poems and stories, it just adds so many more dimensions to be able to hear the authors in their own voice sharing it. So thank you for creating this opportunity.
I realized that for all of you, just different people, that you hadn't read what each other, we were so excited when we knew that people's books were arriving. So you could see whose company you're in. So I'm glad it was good for you. If there's not more questions, we really thank you for coming. Yes, so much.
Yeah.
And for having us.
Yeah, thanks again to Shelf Life and to Single Onion, to David and to Lori, and to all the people, the organizations that we were lucky enough to be funded by, including special shout out to Calgary Arts Development for a wonderful amount of funding, which allowed us to pay all the contributors. So we're very, very thrilled to be able to do that as well, because we both believe that's also something that's very important. So, okay, thanks again, everybody.
Just have a couple of housekeeping things. On behalf of Single Onion, We want to thank the Canada Council for the Arts, the League of Canadian Poets, Calgary Arts Development, and the Writers Guild of Alberta for supporting our series. We especially want to thank Shelf Life Books for being our host, for the past 2.5 years being our online co-host, but now our host as well. If you want to learn more about the Single Onion, we have a website, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we've got an email list that you can sign up for. I want to thank the Single Onion board members, Kirk Miles, Paul Marshall, new members Will Lawrence and Paul Kelly, and especially Lori Roadhouse, who's not here this evening, but she helped to put together this event, so we really appreciate that. Just to note that former Single Onion member Patrick Horner has a book launch coming up on October 11th. He'll be back in town because he lives in Denmark now, so we're really excited to see him. And oh yeah, sometime this fall we will be having the Single Onion anniversary party. It was supposed to be in 2020. It was going to be our 20th anniversary, so now it's going to be our 22nd anniversary. But we've got some big plans to celebrate with some music and poetry and bringing together different literary groups from Calgary, and just to have like a really big celebration for the fact that we've stuck around this long. And yeah, and Single Onion will be back on October 20th with our next reading here. I want to thank the people who joined us online. This is our first hybrid event, so we're still kind of figuring this out. Hopefully it went okay tech-wise, but thanks again to everyone and to you two and all the poets. So thanks everyone, have a great night.